Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this workshop today. So, my name is Kieran. I am one of your English support tutors here on the Manchester campus of Elizabeth School of London. So, the topic of our workshop today is going to be on, as you can see on the screen, effective listening and note taking for lectures. So if you feel like you have some problems of making sure you're listening to your lecturer well and making nice, effective, productive notes, then hopefully this PowerPoint will be able to help you out today. Okay, so we are going to have a look at the techniques that you can use in order to lead you towards success. All right, so we're going to do a little activity here for you just to begin. All right. You are going to listen to a combination of sounds for just a minute or so. What you need to do is to just make a note of any sounds that you hear coming from it. Okay. All right. So there should just be about 4 different sounds that you hear. So just write them down and listen. Okay. So that was your first sound. Now coming up is the second sound. Okay. So that was the second sound. And that is the third sound there. Okay, and then that last sound that you heard there was the fourth sound. Okay, so if you were listening effectively there, you should have known that the sounds were the first one was a bowling ball, the second one was a flushing toilet, the third one was the sound of an owl hooting, and the last one was the sound of a pen clicking. So that was just a nice little warmer activity just to make sure that you are able to listen and to make notes effectively. So now let's have a look at what we are going to cover in this session today. So our main idea is to make sure that we improve our listening and our note-taking skills during lectures. So the different sections we're going to have a look at are the idea of active listening. So we're going to see what that is. We're then going to see how that connects with effective note taking and then see some tips that will help us to succeed. All right, then we're going to see how mastering those different skills enhances our academic and professional endeavors. So once we have learned those skills, we're going to see how we can use them through our academic journey. Okay. We're going to see how active listening actually helps us to understand, but also more generally strengthens our communication skills. Also, when we do look at effective note taking, we're going to see how it helps us to retain the knowledge that we've learned and also helps us to be more efficient. Okay. So then, when we are good with our listening and note taking skills, this will mean that we are achieving our goals more effectively. And that also then leads us to academic and professional success. And then just in our general life, that will allow us to engage actively with other people. Okay, so like we mentioned, then let's have a look at active listening. Okay, so active listening is actively engaging with the speaker to show that you are understanding their message. So maybe when you're speaking to your friends or to your family and they are saying something, what do you usually do? Do you remain exactly still and not make a sound? Or do you use body language? Do you use other things to show them that you are listening? Well, this is what we're talking about here then. So this is active listening. So active listening is actively engaging. Okay, so you're not being passive, you're being active in the way that you're listening. Okay, so if you are skilled in this, then this is going to lead to better information retention, improve comprehension and understanding, and also will help you to question the other person more effectively. Okay. And you can apply this then to your academic journey. So when you're in lectures here, this will help you to understand more your lectures. Okay. So the benefits can be you retain more information, your understanding is improved, and then you are able to ask relevant questions more easily. So some ways that you can do this, the different techniques are most importantly maintaining eye contact. That shows that your attention is firmly focused on them. Another kind of part of the body language can be nodding. Okay, this is a simple and easy way to show that you agree. Okay, but it also shows that you are taking the points and ideas on board. Okay, so these can be used in any situation where you are listening to another person, but they can especially be used in lectures. Okay, so if possible, see if you can use these and they will help you to communicate more successfully. So let's move on to the other part of our workshop here, which is note taking. So here on the screen, you can see 6 of the most common note taking problems that I've encountered, that you've encountered, that the general population encounter. So, you're listening to a lecturer, you're trying to understand everything you say, you're trying to write down all of the important parts, but when you look at your notes later on, you can't understand a single thing you have written. So these are the problems which are connected to that idea then. So it could be that your notes are disorganized, that your notes are scattered and difficult to retrieve. Okay. So if you find that you do have that problem, it is suggested that you look at the more structured forms of note taking, like the Cornell or the outline method, which we will cover later on. Another situation you could have is something called information overload. This is when there is too much information and it is difficult for you to pick out the most important parts of that. Okay, so if you have ever suffered that problem, then the solution is mainly to focus on the main ideas and to use bullet points for clarity. Okay, so we touched a little bit before on active and passive listening. So here is the idea of passive note taking. This is when you're writing down everything, but you haven't actively engaged with the idea that is being discussed. Okay, so what you could do at this point is then to try to summarize what you've already heard, to paraphrase it, and also to ask questions to your lecturers to just see if your ideas are correct about what they've discussed. Moving on to the fourth problem, which can be poor time management. Okay, so it could be that you are rushing in order to make sure that you're taking down all of your notes. And if you do that, you're actually missing the most important parts. So the solution to this is prioritizing the information. Yeah, you can't write everything that they are saying, so just focus on those things that you need more help with. Okay. One further problem can be the idea of distraction. So these can be things which are interrupting your work. So this could be things like technology or surroundings. So try to minimize as much as possible your own distractions. So it could be, turning off your phone, removing your earbuds from your ears while you're in class. That might be a good idea. Okay, but just make sure that you do have a nice, quiet, steady space. And the final problem that is common is incomplete notes. Okay, so this could be again that you're missing some important details because of the speed of the class. So one solution for this could be developing shorthand techniques. Yeah, you don't have to write everything in long sentences. You can just write the more important words. You then review it after class and then try to fill in the gaps that you have left. Okay, so those are the most common problems. And then throughout the rest of the workshop, we're going to look at some possible solutions. Okay, so note taking doesn't just start in class when you start writing down your ideas. It can be done before class. Okay, so even before your lecture has started, you may want to review your previous notes. So this is generally a good idea for everybody here. So the reason you should do this is you've had a look at what happened last time. This reinforces what you've already learned, and then it also provides a context for what is going to come up in the next lecture. Okay, so just before you come to your lectures, make sure you spend a few minutes looking through your previous notes. Okay. The other thing to do is to make sure that you have read the assigned material. The lecture is going to be based on what you have read. So really do make sure that you understand the key points even before you've got into the classroom. Okay. All right. And if there was something that you didn't understand well last time, make sure you prepare some questions that can be answered by your lecturer just to ensure that you are more understanding of what has gone on in the class. So yeah, make sure you jot down any questions when you have been reviewing your notes. Okay, so we are going to have a look at some different methods now of note taking. So 6 different methods. We're going to have a look at the pros and cons of all of them and how you can actually implement them into your studies. So the first one we're going to have a look at is the Cornell method, which is a structured, organized form of note taking, which again promotes active engagement. We'll also have a look at mind mapping, which is quite different, which is more visual, non-linear, and also a creative way of taking notes. After that, we'll move on to the outline method, which is hierarchical, logical, and, if done correctly, clear. After that, there is the charting method, which again is a type of structured one, but it is more comparative and should be more efficient for you. There is also the sentence method, which is much more focused on details. And then lastly, we have the mapping method, which again is visual, but also brings in the organized element as well. So here on the screen, you can see the Cornell method. So maybe pause the video at this point and just take a look at the example on the left before we discuss it in more detail. Okay, so now that you've taken a look at the Cornell method, let's discuss some of the more of the details of it. Okay, so you are basically splitting the page up into 3 sections. Okay, so the one on the left is called the Q column, which we'll come back to in a second. The one on the right is the notes column. So this is what you're going to do during the class. You're going to make notes from the lecture here. And as much as possible, try not to write too much. Try to write shorter sentences with shorthand symbols, if possible, abbreviations, lists, things like that. Okay, so that's what you're going to do during the class. Now, after the class, you're then going to use the 2 other sections. So on the left, you're just going to write the main ideas and any other questions that link the points that were given during the class. Okay. And then at the part at the bottom of the page, this is where you're just going to write a brief summary of just the main ideas which were included. Okay, so when you look back at your notes later on, you maybe don't need to look at the details so much. You can just look at the summary section afterwards. Okay, so as it tells us here, regular use of the Cornell method can help you to retain the information more effectively and also aids your understanding. Okay, so same again here for mind mapping. Okay, so maybe pause the video here, take a couple of minutes to look at the information, and then we will discuss the details a bit more specifically. All right, so this is mind mapping. So this is also called spider diagrams as well. Okay, so what you do is you put the main idea in the center, and then from the center radiating out, you're going to have other clusters of ideas that go in in different directions. So this is a much more visual way of making your notes. So you start with your main idea, and then the other ideas come out and develop more. If there is extra information which you want to give to those ideas, they also come out of that next section. Okay. All right. So this is not a linear way of learning, but more here of a creative way of doing it. Okay. So if you want to follow the idea, you just end up following the different sections. Okay. So if you find it more helpful to have something visual, this may be the way that works for you. Okay, so now we move on to the outline method. So once more, pause the video here, have a look at the details, and then we'll come back. Okay, so the outline method is much more useful when you know the structure of the lecture that you're going to attend. So if you already know the structure, this is where you are able to provide the main topics beforehand. You put bullet points there about each thing that will be discussed. And then underneath, that is where you elaborate more on those ideas which have been discussed. So this is much more structured. This is much more about following uh, a idea through in more detail. Okay. So yeah, if you are using this in more structured lectures, then this is definitely a good idea of what you could use. Okay. So next we have the charting method. So if you find tables and things easier to read, then this may be something for you. So this is basically where you're dividing the information up into both rows and columns. Okay. So if you see here, they've divided it up into how something is done, the advantages, the disadvantages, and when to use it. So this more tabular form is helping if you just want to find the advantages, you have it right there. If you just want to find out the disadvantages, it is there as well. So again, if you know the structure of the lecture that you're going to be attending, and you know that there could be 4 different sections that they will talk about, then the idea of using rows and columns may be more useful for you there. Okay, so this will help you to look at comparisons and contrasting different ideas. Okay, so next is the idea of the sentence method. Okay, so take a little bit of time here to read the information on the screen. Okay, so I think this is possibly the most common way that people do it. And in theory, it is a very good way to do it. So generally, if it is going to be a fast-paced lecture, then it is a good idea for every new idea that you hear to then start it on a new line. So this generally leads to you having like a list of bullet points that you have composed. Okay, so for you to do this effectively, you must be writing short, concise sentences. So don't try to write every single word that you hear, but just the main idea. Okay. All right. So this is possible for you to do, but just make sure that you are not writing too much. Okay. So now that we've looked at those different methods, let's now look at some digital tools that you could use to help you to organize your notes. Okay. So it may be that you've heard about the different apps like Evernote, OneNote, or Google Keep. Okay, so the first one here, Evernote, gives you some robust organization with your notebooks and tags. Okay, if you are using Windows, then you have OneNote. So this is integrated with your Microsoft Office. So this is much more flexible in how you use your notebook. And Google Keep is very similar. This is integrated with your Gmail account, probably. So this will give you the interface with color-coded notes, reminders, things like that. Okay, so because they are digital tools, you should be able to look at your notes from multiple devices, depending where you are in the world. Okay, you can give them tags and links and things like that, linking to images or emails. And it also means that you are able to share your notes with other people, whether they are on campus or off campus, things like that. Okay. But do bear in mind, if you are the kind of person who can be distracted when using a device, try not to use these too much. If you find you are opening up your phone or tablet to make some notes, but then you've ended up on YouTube, then that's probably the wrong thing for you to be doing. Okay. All right. And do make sure that you're ensuring your privacy and security of your sensitive information. Okay. So now some more general tips to help you with note taking. So the first one is to always be prepared. Okay. So like we mentioned earlier on, make sure that you have reviewed your information from the last lecture so that you are familiar with what is going to come up in today's lecture. The second tip is to stay organized. So make sure that you are using structured methods to keep your ideas clear. Tip number 3 is to focus on the key information. You will never be able to write down every single idea that is mentioned, so make sure that you are only concentrating on the main ideas and the significant details. Your fourth tip is to use abbreviations and symbols. Okay, so you may want to develop your own little system of symbols and things like that, which can show information without you having to write long words. Okay, your fifth tip is to review and revise. So after you've made your notes, have a look at them again, see if you can make them clearer, try to provide more of a structure. And then before the next class, do the same thing again. Look at your notes, try to see if you still have the understanding of that session. And the last tip here is to combine the methods. So make sure you practice, make sure you experiment with those different techniques that we've looked at. There may be one that is more suitable for you. And if that is so, then try to use it as much as possible. Okay, so thinking about the review and practice part that we had there. Okay, so this is basically a practice that is never ending, that can be ongoing. Okay, but if we just choose a random place to begin, maybe at the start here. Okay, so just periodically make sure that you are reviewing your notes to reinforce your learning. You may then want to do this with your classmates to compare to see if their notes are similar or different. Okay, you may want to do a practice session where you are implementing those note-taking methods in your lectures or in your seminars. Okay. All right. So you may want to reference, so you do have the Professor Sander Tam, who says that it is extremely important to make sure that you are continuously practicing and reviewing. All right. And make sure that you are setting yourself some goals to make sure that you're developing a consistent form of effective note taking. All right. So if you are in a situation here where you're working with a partner, you may want to discuss with your partner how you are implementing effective listening during lectures. Okay. So if you are in that kind of situation, you may want to pause the video now and for 1 minute discuss what strategies you're currently using. If not, we will continue. So let's have a look at some next steps that will be able to help you in the future. Okay, so it may be that you do want to organize some of those group study sessions. Now, they are important for a few different reasons, but the main one is that collaborative learning generally leads to improved comprehension and performance. Okay, so if that is something that sounds great for you, then see if you can form some small groups of maybe 3 to 5 members. Make sure that you are regularly meeting, okay, before any lectures, okay? So in that situation, you will be sharing and comparing your notes and discussing anything critical that has come from it, okay? And then after your lecture, make sure that you are discussing what has come up, asking questions to each other, and then you are preparing for the next lecture after that, okay? So for these kind of sessions to work, you really need to make sure that everybody is actively participating. Make sure you do take some little breaks to ensure that you are fully concentrated and productive. Okay. Now, the lecturer may suggest that you do these, but make sure that you yourself are in charge of organizing your study sessions. And really, by taking the initiative and planning these sessions yourself, you can significantly improve your learning experience. So if you are looking for any extra support then with effective note taking and active listening, there are some things that you can take a look at. So there is the recommended reading here on the screen. So the Cornell note-taking method by Walter Pauk, and also How to Mind Map by Tony Buzan. There are some online tools, like we've mentioned before, Evernote and OneNote. And if you would like a mind mapping tool, you can use MindMeister or XMind. If you're looking for additional tips, you can go to the UNSW's page on note-taking tips. For you to learn independently, make sure that you are exploring those different methods of note-taking and trying to improve yourself continuously. And if you do need any extra help, you can come and visit me or my partner, Christine, and we will be able to point you in the right direction. Okay, so thank you for attending this session today. I hope it has been very useful for you. If you require the references for any of the information we've talked about today, you can see them here on the screen. But just remember then, if you do need any support at all, you can contact me at kieran.w@esl.ac.uk, or we can organize some on-campus sessions or Microsoft Teams sessions for us to help you with note-taking or anything else English language related. So thank you for attending, everybody, today, and I hope to see you again in future.